Jeff Wagenheim with ESPN. I am here with Justin Gaethje, who has a big fight coming up. He's headlining UFC 324 on January 24th. It is the first UFC fight of the year, and his opponent, Paddy Pimblett. And at stake will be the UFC lightweight championship, the interim lightweight championship. And uh, welcome, Pat. Welcome. It's very good to talk to you. And I guess the first thing I want to ask you about is the fact that this is the main event of this fight card. The fight card took a big hit when
Yeah,
the
dude.
other title fight, Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes, had to be postponed after Kayla underwent surgery. And before that happened, UFC CEO Dana White was saying this is the biggest fight in women's MMA history, which is a big deal.
I absolutely agree with that.
However, that was the co-main event. The main event was your fight, and I would have to say that it has a lot to do with the fact that you are self-proclaimed and I think acknowledged by the fans the most entertaining fighter in MMA. And so, talk a little bit about that, about the idea that you are headlining the first fight card of the year over what was to be the biggest fight in women's
Yeah.
history.
No, I mean I don't get to really look back and appreciate or be proud of what I've accomplished, but yeah, this is just another thing in my legacy that I will be proud of. And I do believe it's because I'm the most exciting guy that's ever stepped in there, the most consistent for sure. And with this new Paramount deal, they're going to need to introduce this sport to a lot of new fans. And who better than the most consistent guy that's ever stepped in there? Um, and again, it's against the guy that's also exciting against Paddy Pimblett, who has a lot of momentum behind him. He's a very confident dude, and I think the fans are fickle. They forget, and I think they forget how good I am at this sport. And I think, I love being the underdog. This is my 15th fight at the UFC, and my 11th time being the underdog in my fights. I'm 8-2 as an underdog, and from being as far as I can remember, there was always my best performances, and it was when people were counting me out, and I was the underdog. Especially now that people get the bet. So if you've been on the ride with me the whole time, you were up a significant amount of money. With me being 8-2 as an underdog.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you being an exciting fighter is a purposeful thing. It's not just some random thing. Because I remember you talking early in your UFC run about how you have a decorated wrestling background, but that you've chosen to, for the most part, keep your fights standing because that was the thing that was going to make things most exciting for the fans, but also it was going to get you paid, and you're a prize fighter, so it makes sense that you
Yep.
want to get the most money. And so I guess I would ask you about that. I mean, the idea that there are a lot of different ways of succeeding in mixed martial arts. That's why they call it mixed martial arts. But
Yeah.
standing and fighting is the way that you succeed monetarily, and that's
Yeah.
something
Well, I mean, it's
really
also
up.
I also think it's how I need to fight. People don't understand how exhausting wrestling is, and especially these championship fights are 25-minute fights. 5 5-minute rounds. It's very different than a three round fight, which is 15 minutes. And I know it always seems like 10 minutes difference, but that's a significant amount of time when you're sprinting. And a huge part of wrestling is stopping them from taking you down, and that's always what I was the best at. I was never a great offensive wrestler, um, and luckily with my athletic ability, with my coach, I've learned how to create damage, and for one with my leg kicks, and as soon as I can compromise their legs, then everything about them is going to be less effective, and so that's been my game plan and my theory. I think it's very hard for people who don't do what I do or do, fight to understand what is happening and what I'm doing. I'm constantly using technique to control their feet, control space, and you're trying to control their breathing. And there's a lot of factors that are going on in there. And I think I found my best way and to be successful, and that's what I've been trying to perfect over the years. it just happens to be exciting. Even when I was wrestling, even though wrestling is boring, I was an exciting wrestler. I
Mm.
always got oohs and ahs from the crowd because it's just the way that I perform.
Well, you talk about developing skills and developing strategies. I mean, I'm sure that you probably perceive it differently, but certainly from many fans back in the day, back in the older days, when you came to the UFC as a 17-0 fighter,
Hmm.
15 finishes over, and you came out of the World Series of Fighting, and you were this wild man fighting, and of course then you make that debut against Michael Johnson like almost 9 years ago, and that became like a wild fight, and there was this perception of you as this just wild brawling guy, but over the years you have, with the help of your coach Trevor Whitman, developed a more strategic approach, and yet even with that you haven't become a point fighter. You've sort of managed to become strategic while still bringing the excitement. And
Yeah.
how is that balance? How difficult has that balance been? And how difficult has it been for you to sort of like think strategically in there when sometimes your instinct wants to just go after the guy?
I mean, it has not been difficult at all because ultimately I'm never thinking in there. It's preparation. It's how I prepare for these fights. My sparring partners know that's how I fight. There's no, I don't have the intentions to hurt somebody when I'm sparring in practice, and then I get to flip that switch when it comes to fighting. But I'm always training the same. Um, but ultimately, it's all cardio. I'm trying to get them tired, and when they're tired, I can you know, do anything I want to them. And so that's ultimately where I'm trying to get this fight. That's where I got the Z fight, the Chandler fight. And fortunately for them, it was a 3 round fight because if it was a 5 round fight, then I would have hurt them badly. And I
Mm.
really want to get this kid specifically to those rounds. And I specifically want to hurt this kid badly. So I'm excited. I'm excited for this opportunity. Can't wait to this kid up, honestly. Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
I've been telling myself he's gonna hurt me so that I go to the most primal place that I can. And when I go to that place, I'm one of the most dangerous in the world. And so I'm excited. My preparation has been 100%. I'm so lucky to get through these camps without any serious injuries. I've never pulled out from a fight or been taken off of a card, and I'm very proud of that. And I think that's a testament to the team I have around me and the lifestyle that I live.
Mm.
Being an athlete.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we started this by talking about how this fight, well, now it's the title fight on the card. It was supposed to be headlining over a title fight, but this is an interim title fight. And you've talked about how undisputed title, interim title. In a lot of ways, it's the same to you because ultimately you get paid like a champion if you win this fight. And so I'm
Yeah.
curious about, like, you obviously looked at your fight career with some level of strategy in terms of being a prize fighter, trying to make the most money for you and your family. And so, tell me a little bit about that, about being in an interim title fight, and how important
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge. I mean, I it just shows that the UFC, trust me, to put me in these positions. Armin's not here for a reason, because he's again. I've never pulled out from a fight. Um, I should knock on wood because you know.
Yeah, we got
But
time
I
left.
mean, I feel great right now. My weight is, it's gonna the weight cut sucks. There's no way around that. But I have a great team around me. So yeah, I mean, I'm very proud. I can't tell you how proud I will be when I get to reflect on what I've accomplished here. I know how proud my parents are, and that's a huge part, huge reason why, or motivating factor for me. I've always wanted to make my parents proud. They deserve everything that they can feel and all the recognition that they can get. They deserve because I'm only here because of them, and I thank God every single day for them. So without that moral support and the unconditional love from my team and my family, then I would never be what I am here today. So, I still feel, when I talk about parents or how you should parent, I'm always talking from the kid's perspective because I still feel like, I've never been married, I don't have kids. I committed to this journey when my dad dropped me off in 2007, and I've been on the same journey since I left home. And, I've just always been trying to make them proud. And I'm happy to be in these positions and fight these big fights.
Yeah, well, you're in these positions because you keep making the fans happy, right? I mean, we talked about you being more strategic as your career has developed, but two of your last three fights have ended in spectacular knockouts. Of course, in one of those cases, you were on the wrong end of that.
Yeah,
And
part of
I'm
the
wondering
game.
when something like when a fight happens the way that Max Holloway fight ended, do you ever go back and say, well, if I was more, if I did a little more of this, a little bit of that, or do you just look at it as like I gave everything and this is and most of the time that's going to be enough, and this time it just happened to not be?
No, I think you have to reflect on the mistakes. I think the biggest mistake for me was, looking at it as a spectacle fight or a fight that was for fun, and not understanding or recognizing the danger that I was in. So I didn't get to go to my primal competitive nature. And that was so. I mean, that was a scary night. When you go to a primal place, you're not there. You're not retaining information. I remember his face. I've never seen an opponent's face.
Hmm.
And so it was a big mistake for me to. And it happens in the preparation. There was a lot of mistakes made in my mind, and I had the wrong mindset going into that fight, and it was a huge mistake. And that's why I want to fight him again because I
Speaking
won't, I won't, I
of,
won't do that again.
so you'd like to step in with Max again. That would be a if you're thinking about fights you'd like to have
If
that
I
be
want one fight back, it's that. I mean, even it could be. It's honestly the winner of the BMF belt because those two guys. And it sucks to make excuses, but those are the only two guys that have ever got me not at my best for two different reasons. I've talked about being in a bike crash 18 days before Oliveira fight, banging my head off the road. I was compromised walking into that fight, and for Max, it was a mindset thing. So those are the only two guys that have ever got, um, not the best of me, and two fatal mistakes.
so now we have this fight, and you've talked about getting to that primal place, and you've not been ever been a trash talking guy, and I've noticed that sometimes Paddy has been, but in preparation for this fight, he's given you nothing but respect. He talks about you as a legend. He talks about you as the most exciting fighter in the sport, and so he kind of. I don't know. It's been kind of like cordial in the press conference and some of the
Yeah.
meetings. But so how will you get to that primal place? And do you expect to
Oh
see Paddy Pimblett's face? You said you've never seen an
no.
opponent's face other than Max. Are you going to
Yeah.
see Paddy Pimblett's face? Or are you just going to see red and just and be going
It's
after it?
no. When I say I don't see their face, it's not that I'm seeing red. It's that I'm not retaining information. I'm completely intuitive and reactive, and no, and especially with all the times that I've done it, I don't need them to talk shit no more. I know what he's trying to do to me. I've convinced myself that he's gonna try to kill me, and I don't want to put my parents through that. I don't want my family to see that, and that's how I get there.
Mm.
Is
Looking
by
forward to it.
oh, I cannot wait, cannot
Yeah,
wait.
looking forward to it. That's Justin Gaethje. He fights January the 24th, UFC 324, headlining against Paddy Pimblett for the interim UFC lightweight championship. And I'm knocking on wood too, because I want to make sure I see that fight, and I'm looking forward to it a lot. It's great to talk to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You guys have a great day.